You're with Julian on the Brown Note, How to Make Friends, and one of my irregular pieces, Why I Oppose Commercial Surrogacy. Just like the Pope. The Pope's come out and said that in a recent address, Pope Francis called surrogacy deplorable, criticising the grave violation of the dignity of woman and child based on the exploitation of situations of the mother's material needs. A child, he says, shouldn't be the basis of a commercial contract. The pronouncement produced an unlikely alliance between religious conservatives and feminist progressives. I kind of agree with the Pope. I mean, the Catholic Church has never met a woman it didn't want to control. It has been dragged kicking and screaming through things like in the 60s where it allowed women to use the contraceptive pill, which was a watershed moment. This is something that I oppose specifically commercial surrogacy. For me, the most often time that will happen is wealthy men paying poor women to use their bodies as incubators for their babies. And that is far too Handmaid's Tale for me to actually say that I agree with it. Now, if your daughter or your sister is infertile and you want to carry their baby, you are doing one of the most wonderful things on earth. But to be paid for it, we have this thing called, I've been attacked for saying this already, for saying, mind your own business, you incel, keep out of women's bodies. Exploitation is everyone's business. And we acknowledge that there are certain things that you can do for money that people shouldn't be allowed to pay you to do, because you're desperate for money in a desperate situation, and people can exploit you for your labor. But for your labor is one thing, for your body is another. There's a massive difference between adoption and actually selling a baby. There's a massive difference between donating an egg or a sperm, because the woman's carrying that child for 9 months. It's changing her body. It's putting her potentially at fatal risk, even though that is quite low nowadays. And it's selling a child, whichever way you look at it. We don't allow you to give birth to a child, and because you're desperate and you've got another 5 children to feed, you can sell that child. It's illegal. There is no difference at all, because you can't sell the fetus or the embryo. You can sell the born child, and that is no different to selling a child. The only difference here is that you've decided before. It's still selling something that you shouldn't be allowed to sell. And the connection between a man and his sperm and a woman and a child that she's carried for 9 months is completely different. There is no analogy between those two experiences. In Australia, it's only allowed to be altruistic. There's no such thing as altruistic unless you're not being paid. If you're being paid, it's not altruism, it's business. It's being paid. Altruism is, you want to help someone for free have a child. That's being altruistic. If you are poor and getting paid for it, that's exploitation. And it's giving legal rights to somebody else over your child. What if during the course of that pregnancy, you have this nagging doubt that the person that you're giving your child to is an awful human being? The erosion of rights around surrogacy is something that will probably continue, and it's also a very, very grey area. And the various paradigms make me very uncomfortable. So we live in an era where gay men who are rich can have children and gay men who are poor can't. And I just find that all a bit, it doesn't sit with me. And what precedent does it set for the future? All of these things are precedent setting. What does it set for, in the future, in some future, could a woman get time off a prison sentence for entering into this form of relationship? And if you think that's a ridiculous thing to say, remember in America, slavery is abolished unless you are in prison. And that's, I think, the 13th Amendment. It's like it's analogous to forced marriage, but without any of the benefits, because they don't have to give you anything after it's happened. I just find the whole notion of a woman being an incubator for money for a rich person is so likely to lead to exploitation, because a wealthy woman's never going to do this, is she? If she's doing it, she can say she's doing it for altruistic reasons because she might be helping out a friend. But in general, poor women will end up being incubators for money of rich people's children. And I don't agree with that.